All right, would you guys help us welcome the online watch? What's up, guys? Glad y'all are with us this morning. One of the reasons we did that song is because isn't it funny that like this whole society just promotes this idea of living on the edge is so cool and that's radical until you see the graphic of the houses crumbling and you realize maybe that's not as cool, right? That's what this whole series is about. Maybe having no margin isn't that cool. Is that what we're trying to find out is that God actually wants margin. He wants breathing room in our lives. That's how he connects with us. My name's Graham. I'm one of the pastors here. And actually, you might not know this about me, but I was a collegiate swimmer. I swam for the University of Texas, and that's cool. Big deal out of high school, right? That's nobody cares. Like top 10 out of high school in the country, and then you get to college, and the college, you know, they had won the national championship in swimming the 2 years prior to me going there, and the 2 years after. So it's like the #1 program in the world. And trust me, it was like I'm thrilled to be there, not they're thrilled to have me situation. And we're actually our very first, all the freshmen are meeting, we're all in this room, and it goes, hey, introduce yourself, say your name, and then something cool about you. And so first guy goes, he's like, I'm so-and-so, and I have 2 American records. Next guy goes, I'm so-and-so, and I have a world record. Next guy goes, I'm so-and-so, and actually I've been chosen for the Olympic Games. And then he gets to me, and I was like, I'm Graham, and my favorite color is turquoise. Like, I shouldn't be here, right? But I will say that I did a sensational amount of swimming to get to that point. I swam a lot. And if I was going to give you a swimming lesson today, we would work on something that you probably would not expect. It's because it's the thing that I worked countless hours on. And it's body position. Your body position in the water matters so very much. In fact, this is your body in the water, if you are out of alignment, then all of your work, all of your effort, all it's really doing is trying to force you to stay on top of the water. So if your head is up when you're swimming, the back sinks, and your kick is trying to keep you on top of the water. If you're diving down with your T or with your head, your arm stroke is trying to keep you up on top of the water. But if you have the correct body position, if your body's in alignment, then all of your effort, all of your labor, all of your working is moving you forward. And I thought that is a very apropos metaphor for this series, right? Because if we are out of alignment, this whole series is how can we be in alignment in these different areas of our life? If we're out of alignment, then all of our effort, all of our labor, all of our struggles is just keeping us afloat. It just feels like we're surviving. Anybody feel that? It's like, I know I'm doing a lot of work, and somehow it feels like I'm just like barely surviving. I'm just barely on top of the water. And what God is saying is, if you will come into alignment with what I have for you in these different areas. So we've talked about schedule, which is our time, finances, physical health. If you will come into alignment with what I say is fulfilling and life-bringing in those, then all of your effort, all of your labor, all of your habits will actually be moving you forward. They will be creating momentum and growth in your life. And so that's our desire, is to bring us into alignment with God in those different areas. And so we chose those 3 topics. Hopefully you've been here the whole time. If not, go back and watch them. But we talked about schedule, your time, and your perspective on that. We talked about finances. What does God say we can be in alignment with him in finances? And then today we're talking physical health. Now, there's a reason you probably don't hear those topics brought up too often in church. The reason is anytime somebody brings up schedule, finances, physical health, then the feedback is usually, this feels a little self-helpy, you know? This feels like a self-help seminar. Like this feels like a TED Talk, you know? Like it doesn't feel like it's spiritual enough. And today, and throughout this entire series, what we're talking about is that all 3 of these areas dig way deeper than you think that they do. And also, that excuse of it's not spiritual enough, think about how massive those slices of our life's pie chart take up: finances, schedule, and physical health. I mean, so much. Are we going to not evaluate those 3 massive areas? No. Instead, we want to dig into that and say, God, what do you have for me? So today, I drew the short straw to talk about physical health. Everyone fired up? The reason that it's hard to talk about physical health a lot of times, one is because it's just the area that carries the most shame, doesn't it? Like, nobody feels like they're doing the right thing. Nobody feels like they're doing enough. Nobody's like, dude, I'm killing it in physical health department, right? It's probably the area that has the most comparison, which brings all these different identity issues. And quite honestly, like, it's the area that has the most legitimate excuses. When you start talking about moving in physical health, then you go, well, this medical condition or this qualifier. And it's like, no, that's a real thing. And so nobody really knows how to talk about it. And so usually we just kind of drop it, at least for the physical health thing. And even if we did say, hey, we're all on board, let's all take a step forward, then you got like 7 trillion blogs that tell you what to do, right? It's like, which one am I supposed to do? Keto or Atkins or, take the body type test, right? And I'm not going to take a test for $15 that tells me my body type is an eggplant. Like, I've got a mirror for that, right? I'm not trying to do that. And so really our goal is today we're going to kind of dig into 2 things. One is we're going to evaluate the why behind why physical health is so difficult to talk about. Hopefully it's going to bring even a little bit more importance or severity to the topic. And then at the end we'll kind of look at some of these actual practical things that we can do moving forward. So 2 different levels today, right? 2 different levels. And this is what is going to bind us together. We're going to find, first of all, this umbrella symptom that we all suffer from when it comes to physical health. And physical health isn't just doing your ab crunches, right? Physical health is everything that goes into your physical health. Now, the symptoms that lead to your physical unhealth, we all have different manifestations of that. Some of you guys, it's inactivity. Some of you guys, it's overeating. Some of you, it's eating the wrong thing, right? Some of you, it is, maybe this is inactivity, but binge watching TV or video games. For some people, it's drinking. For some people, it's drugs, right? For some people, whatever that vice is that you're thinking, lack of sleep discipline, right? Whatever that thing is, I'm going to try to bind us all under this one common symptom and say that we all suffer from this, and then evaluate what is the root cause of that. So here is the overarching symptom. Now, it manifests in different ways for all of us, but underneath everything, here's what I'm proposing this morning, is that every one of us wrestles with a word called addiction. Addiction. I can already feel it, your pushback, so let me go into a little bit more. When we're talking about addiction, negative addiction in this, addiction, the concept is very simply when you do something you don't want to do. Addiction is, I know that this is bad for me, and I do it anyway. Okay, now, 2 things. One is, for those of you who are in here, what I don't want to do is I don't want to minimize addiction, because I have a lot of friends who are in recovery, and I'm not saying, hey, we're all in the same boat. I fully recognize that what we are addicted to can vary in intensity, and the levels of addiction can for sure vary in intensity. But I do want to make us all aware that at the core concept of addiction, if it's I don't want to do this and I do it anyway, that there is something in there that we are losing control to. There's something in there that we are forfeiting to. And so that's the first thing we're going to do is kind of vet out this word addiction, right? And you already think in your mind, yeah, I don't know. That seems a little intense. Like addiction's the strung out heroin addict. Addiction's my uncle who's out of control. Or you think of that episode of Intervention and you're like, that's addiction. And by the end of this, the reason I say hopefully is because we need to put a word, we need to at least articulate these things that we struggle with, so God says, here's how you get out of it. Now, there is a verse that I'm so very glad is in the Bible. Can't believe it's in the Bible. Can't believe Paul would be this honest. But Paul wrote this verse. You can tell how frustrated Paul is when he writes this. You can hear it. Romans 7, starting in verse 21, here's what Paul writes. I have discovered this principle of life, that when I want to do what is right, I inevitably do what is wrong. I love God's law with all my heart, but there is another power within me that is at war with my mind. This power makes me a slave to the sin that is still within me. Oh, what a miserable person I am. You can just feel the anguish, feel the frustration. He's saying, dude, this is driving me crazy. What I don't want to do, I do. And what I want to do, I don't do. We've all felt that. Whenever you break a resolution or you break that promise to yourself, you go, why can't I just do what I want to do? Or when you fall back into that pattern, you go, this is the one thing that I don't want to do in my life. How do I keep falling into it? And that's honestly why I ask a lot of times, what is your addiction? Not do you have an addiction? Because we all have something that we are doing that we don't want to do. Something that we know is bad for us, and we're like, I would do anything to get this out. Verse 23, but there is another power within me, he says, that is at war with my mind. So he says, there's something broken inside of me. And, it continues, it makes me a slave. Another translation says, it makes me a prisoner. We talked about this last week, but anybody ever felt a prisoner to that addiction? Now, we are phrasing the addiction in this way. So think about that thing that's in your life that you're like, I don't want that there. Anybody ever felt a slave to that? Anybody ever just wish that God would take a magic wand and just like wave it and you'd no longer deal with that? Can you imagine? If he's like, here, magic wand, and guess what? You are only attracted to your spouse for the rest of your life, right? Magic wand, you can't even imagine eating more than the correct portion of the right food. There you go, right? Or magic wand, all the cell phone towers and all the Wi-Fi comes crumbling down in the world and you aren't able to do this. You almost be like, please, right? Please give that to him. Magic wand, and all of your financial discontentment and comparison all of a sudden is like this incredible gratitude and contentment. And honestly, when you phrase it that way, it's like, dude, I would give anything for that freedom. Honestly, when you phrase it that way and you start thinking of the freedom from that thing is when you maybe even realize how much of a grip that thing has on you. I mean, imagine if that thing was gone, whatever that is. Imagine if that thing was gone from your life. Think about how much time you would get back. Imagine how much money you would get back. Imagine how much brain space you would get back. What I want to do really quickly, just in case there's not something that comes to mind, is I want to go over I'm going to frame a cycle. And this is the cycle of addiction, for lack of a better word. And when we're going into this, remember, our default as humans, with a little help from the enemy, is going to want to go into shame. This is not about shame. This is not about shame. I'll say it 3 times. This is not about shame. This is about a beautiful word called conviction. Conviction is the most freeing word there is. Conviction is a God prompt to either stop or start something that is going to give you more freedom and a better relationship with Him. Can you think of a better word? He's like, there's a blockage there that is disallowing you from experiencing my grace and my love. Let's get that the heck out of there. That's what conviction is. And so when we read this, you may resonate with the cycle. When we go through the cycle, you may go, oh, okay, well, when you phrase it that way, maybe this fits in there. And God is going, good. That's not a rub your face in it shame thing. I want to bring you freedom inside of that. We're so afraid of feeling shame that we never enter those things. And we're here going, 2023 is different. It's different. We're going to be willing to enter those things. All right, so the first part of the cycle, essentially, is whatever that addiction is it becomes your identity. It becomes your identity. You ever felt like it moved from just what I do to who I am? Like it is so integrated with your life that it feels like, honestly, this is who I am as a person. There was a song in the top 40 a couple of years ago, but the chorus of the song said, used choice words, but essentially it said, when I'm messed up, that's the real me. When I'm messed up, that's the real me. And I remember hearing that and going, isn't that our thought? Isn't that what the enemy says? Yeah, I know that you're doing pretty well, but last Thursday night, that's the real you. Oh, you thought you changed? Oh, you thought you took a step in a positive direction? That's the real you. Yeah, I know you went to the gym 3 times, but when you're digging at the bottom of that chip bag, that's the real you. I know that you went out for that thing. I know that you did that thing. I know you fell back into the pattern. That's the real you. And you begin to believe that. In fact, we begin to say things like that. You just begin to kind of own that as a part of your identity. You say, that's just who I am. That's just who I am. My mom's overweight. My dad's overweight. I'm just overweight. That's who I am. I'm just an angry person, right? It's that Scottish blood. It's that Puerto Rican blood. I'm just an angry person, right? I've got this side. It says I'm just a drinker. I'm just a drinker. I feel more comfortable when I drink. That's just who I am. In fact, I drive better with a beer, right? That's just who I am. I'm just a cusser. I'm just a partier. I'm just this. That's who I am. And by attaching it to our identity, we essentially make it impossible to move forward. And now that leads to kind of this next step in our cycle, and it's this. When I try to quit but I fail, I feel increasingly hopeless. Everyone's felt that. You're like, no, I'm serious this time. No, I'm serious this time. Enough with this. I got to get out. And then what happens when you stumble again, when you fail again, you go, it's hopeless. Now, the word hopeless, by the way, is not synonymous with depressed. It can mean depressed, but it doesn't have to. You know what hopeless means? Hopeless means that you've given up hope of anything changing. Anybody ever felt that? You just go, I just got to manage this. Like this isn't going to change. I know that it's not going to change. In your mind, you go, I'll make a commitment or whatever, but I know that this will always be there. Maybe for some of you guys, honestly, this morning, what you need is a defibrillator to your hope. Maybe some of you guys just need to remind yourselves that God has good for you. Maybe some of you guys need to remind yourself that he has not given up on you. We attribute our identity to our addiction, but our good God does not. Our God says, in fact, you are not your addiction. You are not your bad choices. You are not last Thursday night. I get to declare who you are. And not only does he separate your identity from your addiction, but God says, I have a life for you free of that addiction. I believe that you can move beyond this addiction. I want freedom for you in that area. I will be with you in freedom for that area. But we don't believe it because we're not turning to God. It is inward turning. And so our addiction is our identity. Then we try to quit, but we fail. We become increasingly hopeless. And then somebody tries to lean in and help us. Inevitably, somebody will lean in, and what happens? Any threat to my addiction becomes a threat to me. You ever notice that you can bring that thing up, but if somebody else brings it up, it's either under control or it's off limits, right? And why is it? Why do we avoid that thing? Obviously, it's because who in their right mind would want to talk about something they feel powerless to? That's awful, right? And so we avoid that thing like the plague. We actually curb conversation away from that. If we think that someone's going to bring it up, we steer it away. But God has created us to be relational beings. You are created to heal inside of relationship. It's why we have the phrase that inspiration happens in rows, transformation happens in circles. It's because at some point you have to take a risk relationally, bear that part of you that is not great, that is struggling, that has this addiction, and people around you are able to echo God's encouragement and affirmation over you. That has to happen. That's what Rooted is about. You get inside of a group and you go, this is something that's in my life that I wish it wasn't. And they go, hey, we are here with you in the journey of healing. But again, when it's up to us, we recoil. It's our identity, and then we try to quit, but we fail, so we become increasingly hopeless. And then somebody tries to lean in, and you go, no, an attack on my addiction is an attack on me. And then finally, you just begin to lose your life. You've almost forfeited that entire part of your life. And you try to compartmentalize it. You try to keep it over here. You know what happens? It actually becomes a filter that you see the rest of the world through. Your mindset of hopelessness with that addiction actually affects the way that you see yourself in every single area. I hope that it can stay over here, and it never does. You begin to lose your life. I watched this special the other day, and it was called The 1 Ton Man. And as they were interviewing this guy, he had a bunch of phrases that were just so relatable. One of his phrases, he goes, it was too late to change, is what he said, right? He got to a point where he's like, what do I do? Like, where do I even start? I brought it up like Hoarders, the show, when somebody goes, hey, clean your house, and you go, no, like, where do I even start? Another thing that he said was, it was too hard. Another thing he says is, I got to the point and I just gave up. And I go, I have felt all three of those things. I've felt all three of those things. It's too late to change. I'm just going to manage. Who cares? I can just ride this until, I die. It's fine. It's too hard. Like, I've tried it a bunch of times and screwed it up, and then finally you just give up. And what you have decided, what I have decided, what we have decided in that is to say, I don't believe I can be free from this, so I'm just going to manage it. So finally, the very last part of the cycle, of course, is you ease the pain by getting your next fix. You ease the pain by getting the next fix, which is amazing. It's amazing because we actually try to escape our shame by diving deeper into our addiction. And that is why we say the cycle is not a circle. Because when you come back to that and you get your next fix, you think you're in the same place emotionally? No way. It is more a part of your identity. You feel even more hopeless when you fail again. You're even more insecure and defensive when somebody brings it up. And it's this downward spiral. Now, because all of us have something that we are struggling through, all of us have an area of addiction, something, remember, it can feel kind of benign, but it's just something that we wish we didn't do that we do. Because we all have it, people are in different areas this morning. Some of you guys are in the place where you still are optimistic. Maybe you're not that far down the cycle and you think things could still be different. Maybe some of you guys are hopeless. And I want to recognize I understand that. I feel that. And who knows better than you where you are? God knows exactly where you are. And here's the good news. God has not given up. God has a next step. He knows what it takes to transform your mind. He knows what it takes through habits to get you to a healthy life where you are thriving, where you are connected to Him. Now, I said we're going to talk about this main symptom, which is addiction. This is kind of an umbrella symptom, manifests in different ways. And then what I want to do is talk about the root cause to that symptom. And here it is. Here's the big reveal. Here's the move that bus moment, okay? Our root cause is a word, idolatry. What? Right? You're like, no, I don't have a golden cow in my living room, Graham. I'm good. Or maybe you're thinking, I don't even know if I believe in God. How do I have an idol? Like, I haven't pledged allegiance to God, so how am I cheating on God with somebody else when I don't believe in God? What is idolatry? What does that look like in our lives? Essentially, an idol is something that you worship. An idol is something that you serve. It is something that you put your trust in. It is something that you put your hope in. And maybe we wouldn't phrase it like that, but start to frame your addiction in the idolatry way. Is it something that you actually put trust in, you put your hope in? Now, there's a passage in Scripture in Isaiah where it talks about this idea of idols. And when we have a moment of clarity inside of here, when we are away from feeling emotionally and physically addicted or drawn to that thing, hopefully in this, we have the most peace inside of this moment right now, the most mental and spiritual clarity. And God is highlighting that area and saying, that's what I want out of there. And so in our clarity right now, we think this. Here's what they say about an idol. Isaiah 44, how foolish are those who manufacture idols. This is all of us, don't feel bad. These prize objects are really worthless. The people who worship idols don't know this, so they are all put to shame. But who but a fool would make his own god? An idol that cannot help him one bit. Now, they're actually talking about a physical idol here, but think metaphorically. Think about that thing that you have created inside of your life that you've put your trust in. All who worship idols will be disgraced along with all these craftsmen, mere humans, who claim they can make a god. They may all stand together, but they will stand in terror and shame. Continuing verse 14, it says, he cuts down cedars. He selects the cypress and the oak, whoever this guy is creating the God. He plants the pine in the forest to be nourished by the rain. Then he uses part of the wood to make a fire. With it, he warms himself and bakes his bread. Then, yeah, it's true, he takes the rest of it and makes himself a god to worship. He makes an idol and bows down in front of it. He burns part of the tree to roast his meat to keep himself warm. He says, fire feels good. And then he takes what's left and makes his god a carved idol. He falls down in front of it, worshiping and praying to it. Rescue me, he says, you are my God. Such stupidity and ignorance. Their eyes are closed and they cannot see. Their minds are shut and they cannot think. The person who made the idol never stops to reflect, maybe it's just a block of wood. I burned half of it for heat and used it to bake my bread and roast my meat. How can the rest of it be a god? Should I bow down to worship a piece of wood? The poor deluded fool feeds on ashes. He trusts something that can't help him at all. Yet he cannot bring himself to ask, is this idol that I'm holding in my hand a lie? Here's the concept of idolatry, ultimately. Is God is saying, don't give dominion to anything that doesn't have your best interest in mind. Don't give dominion to anything that doesn't have your best interests in mind. When we worship, when we choose to worship God, when we choose to serve God, when we choose to trust God, think about how much that blesses him. I mean, can you imagine a good father who is blessing his children, creating these opportunities for his children, and his children, instead of saying, thank you, let's have our relationship together, go, actually, I'm more about this block of wood, right? He's like, would you lean into a good father who has eternal perspective and wants the best for you? I said earlier that the physical health component goes deeper than physical health, and that is why this is not a self-help seminar. Is because at the root of all three topics that we're talking about, schedule, finances, and physical health, at the bottom of all three, it is a relational issue. More than anything you will ever do for God, he wants a relationship with you more than anything. That's why he created you, is for a relationship with you. And we take these massive slices of our pie chart and we try to push God out, and he says, would you invite me into those? I want to be, it is a relational component to choose to worship him. And so, why does addiction break God's heart? It's not because, shame on you, you did a naughty thing. It's because, honestly, addiction is a replacement relationship. That we are choosing to trust this other thing, give dominion to this other thing over a loving Father who just wants something good for you. Trust takes trust. That was stupid. Don't tweet that. What I mean is that God is going to give you a step forward that is not like, oh, well, this just feels good all the time. There's a word, satiety, which means like temporary satisfaction. And God will give us steps that are beyond physical satiety. It might not be what feels good in the moment, and that actually blesses God even more. When we trust him to take this step of challenging discipline, imagine how much that blesses God when we trust him that much. To do what beyond just kind of feels good in that moment. And he's saying, would you invite me into this thing? Would you make physical health, bless you, your next step? Be relational. When I said that addiction is a replacement relationship, most dangerous is there's a chance that it's the relationship you're investing the most in. Oh, I thought that was Pastor Eric. That would have been so good. It would have been so good. Pastor Matt, classic. But hey, think about this. The reason that we replace that relationship, especially with addiction, is this. Addictions are very reliable. Now, stay with me here. That drug is going to get you that high. That drink is going to get you that buzz, right? That food is going to give you that feeling and that taste. That website is there with one click. It is there. And what's really damaging is actually what we become addicted to, even more than the chemical dependency, is the reliability of that addiction. My wife and I were reading this book called Love and Respect a few years back, and in it gives you like some practical things to kind of do around the house to honor the other person. And what came up on my list, we were reading it together, so she knew it, was cleaning the house. And I came home one day, and the house was spotless. It was totally clean, top to bottom. And I got frustrated. And I was like, she's probably mad. She probably thought that I took too long, right? She's probably frustrated. So I get pouty. And Kristen, after an hour, she's like, so how does the house look? And all I had to say was, it looks awesome. Thanks, babe. And we would have made out for 4 hours, right? Instead, I go, you know I was going to do it, right? Good start to the night, Graham. That's what you want. But if I was Kristen in that moment, I'd be like, forget what this moron's talking about, right? Let me go to that addiction because I know how that path leads. And a lot of us, whenever we think chaos around us, we go, at least I know what I'm getting with the addiction. Do I get pain? Yes, but it's predictable pain. I heard a comedian talk about the first time he had this addiction in his life. And what he said I thought was really poignant. He goes, I found out that at any point I could make myself feel good. I go, oh, wow. We have chaos all around us. We have inconsistency all around us, and we feel at any point, I know that there's pain coming, but I love this control, that I can control the outcome, that I know that I can feel good at any time, and it takes an extra level of trust beyond physical satiety to say, God, I trust you know what is good for me as a relational issue. All right, so I said the tragedy, obviously beyond the negative effects the addiction has on our bodies, is that it's trained us subconsciously to give up on any relationship that doesn't offer the same level of reliability. Isn't that true? All right. Let's look at our healing steps. Now that we're good and depressed, let's look at our healing steps. I want to look at this really interesting story quickly of the disciples who are Jesus' closest followers. And They've got this thing that they just can't overcome. So it's going to be kind of like this addiction. They can't figure out how to overcome it. Matthew 17, at the foot of the mountain, a large crowd was waiting for them. A man came and knelt before Jesus and said, Lord, have mercy on my son. He has seizures and suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they couldn't heal him. Jesus said, you faithless and corrupt people, how long must I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. Then Jesus rebuked the demon in the boy, and it left him. From that moment, the boy was well. We're going to pull out 2 words from this story. The 2 words are the 2 words that Jesus uses that are faithless and corrupt people. Now, these are in your notes. If you download the app, you can see them in there. But faithless, what faithless means is not connected to God. A faithless person is he's not in prayer with God. He's not connected to God. He is interdependent. He is independent. And so he is trying to white knuckle his way through it. He's faithless, is not connected to God. Corrupt people means too connected to the world. You are not connected to God. You are too connected to the world. And every relationship needs connection and disconnection. If I'm going to have a healthy relationship, a healthy marriage with my wife, we need date nights that are connection and disconnection. We have to get together. We have to be able to talk. We have to be able to hold hands. But I need to be able to disconnect from the kids. I love my kids when they're sleeping. But every once in a while, you got to get a babysitter, right? You got to disconnect from the world. You have to put the phone down. You have to turn the phone off. You have to disconnect to also connect. So if he's saying, I need you to connect more with God and disconnect from the world, then we ask how, and the story continues, and Jesus actually gives the formula of how to connect to God and disconnect from the world. Here's what he says. Verse 19, afterward, the disciples asked Jesus privately, why couldn't we cast out that demon? You don't have enough faith, Jesus told them. I tell you the truth. If you had faith even as small as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it would move. Nothing would be impossible. But this kind of demon won't leave except by prayer and fasting. Here's our formula. Prayer connects us to God. Prayer connects us to God. If we're not connected to God, prayer connects us to God. What is prayer? Very simply, prayer is talking to God. And yes, it is that simple, and yes, it is that important. And I truly believe the reason that resolution has not stuck the way that we want it to, the reason why we can't get that thing out of our life is because we are trying to white knuckle our way through it. We're not inviting the good God of the universe into our struggles. Prayer is waking up in the morning and saying, I have a fear that I'm going to do it again. Father, would you give me the strength? Father, would you make this other path painfully obvious to me? Would you guide my steps this morning? It's prayer. It's conversation with your Heavenly Father. So prayer is connecting to God, and then fasting disconnects us from the world. Fasting essentially means just giving up something that has taken undue priority in our lives. So maybe you delete Facebook from your phone, right? Maybe you don't go to that bar. Maybe you don't eat after a certain time. Give up something to break the dominion cycle in your life. When we give up something, we create space for God to speak in. And honestly, let's just say you've made a commitment to be here Sunday mornings. Just so you know, God is not up there with an Excel spreadsheet going, and perfect attendance. That's not how this works, right? What is great about Sunday morning is we get to a place where we don't have the noise of the world that says, be more, do more. That inside of this is a place of fasting, essentially. We are fasting the noise of the world, and it's in this place that God is able to speak into your soul. You ever just felt God speak into your spirit and hear in a way that you needed to hear? God, I felt you speaking this morning. You know, there's a difference. There's a difference between the word peace and alleviation. God wants peace for you. Peace is when you are connecting to your good Father and He is whispering words of affirmation to your life. That is peace. Alleviation is that physical satiety that says, let me just get to the next day. I'll do whatever I need to. I know that there's going to be pain. I know there's going to be long-term burnout, but I'll do it. God does not want alleviation for your life, because alleviation perpetuates that downward cycle. God is saying, I want something supernatural for you, something that supersedes your addiction. I want to affirm your identity. I want to give you peace and a connection to me relationally. So here's our challenge. Ready? Our challenge is this. When it comes to physical health, one is I want you to recognize that area of addiction in your life. What is that thing? What is that thing that you're doing that you don't want to do? And maybe even just in a very honest moment between you and God, maybe even an honest moment between you and a friend, you say, this is the thing that is there. You make that thing lose its power by speaking it out. And God goes, instead of running away from it, I want you to take a step toward it. And so we are going to begin to pray. We're going to begin to fast. What is the thing that you can wake up and say, God, give me strength with this in the morning? Every morning, that your first thought is a thought of connecting to your Heavenly Father. God, would you help me with this? What is the thing that you can fast? That one thing that will rid you of so many problems in your life. What's the thing you can get away with? Do away with. It has undue priority in your life. And then finally, I want us to create a healthy habit. I want us to pray. I want us to fast something to get clarity. And three is let's bring a healthy habit. So here are just three very easy areas of physical health. And I want you to take a step in one of these, maybe even all three. Well, the three areas are very simply exercise, diet, sleep. Physical health matters. God created us, that all parts of us are integrated. Anybody ever felt spiritually alive with a hangover? No. Physical health matters. It matters, right? It matters. God has designed us to thrive inside of that. And so if you're in here, by the way, that one thing that you're like, don't make me do that, that's the one I want you to go for. Okay? That's your area of breakthrough. So for exercise, I heard somebody one time say, hey, if I'm just going to do an exercise, what's the best exercise to do? And the trainer said, the best exercise is the one you'll do. Do something. You can lean against the sink, do 5 push-ups a day for a week. Takes 15 seconds. Lower your standards. I'm serious. Lower your standards. You're not going to the Olympics. Lower your standards. Just prove to yourself that you can do something. Walk 5 minutes a day. That's it. Right? Sacrifice intensity for consistency. Do something. Okay? Next thing is diet. If you're anything like me, if I buy Cheetos, I will eat Cheetos. I have no self-discipline. If there's a bag of Cheetos, I would eat it in front of you right now if I had them. So I was at the store the other day, and literally I picked up a bag of Cheetos. I'm not even kidding. Out loud, I said, you don't need this. And then I put it back. It's all right. Do that. Make one step. That's a good thing. Physical health matters. Maybe don't go down that aisle. You know if you go down that aisle, you'll buy it. Don't go down the aisle. Just make one step. What is your one step inside of that? When it comes to sleep, maybe you find yourself staying up till 2 a.m. and it's wreaking havoc on you. Here's a tip. Set your alarm for 6:30 a.m. If you wake up at 6:30 a.m. for 4 days, there's no way you can stay up till 2 a.m. Do something. Do something. We are so shame-filled that we never take a step. We don't encourage each other. And then finally, if you're watching online, I want you to put what you're going to do. Write that in the comments. If you are here, I want you to text somebody that you trust what you are going to do. What is your one step? Start low. I'm going to do 5 sink push-ups for a week. Start there. Do something. And then, in the middle of that, remember, that is not you white-knuckling physical health. That is you inviting the God of the universe in to an area that you have felt defeated in, and he is going to give a defibrillator to hope, saying, I am with you in this. I care about this. There is no area of your life that I want you to squeeze me out of. I am here. Cool? All right, let's pray. Yeah, Father, even though we said there's a million different stories, I'm not making light of any of the stories. I know how much shame and how much trauma and how much all that is carried in this physical health and the area of addiction. Good news is, Father, that you know too. And I'm so thankful that you are a kind, that you are a gentle, that you are a persistent God. And if we go out right here and in the next 5 minutes we screw things up, you are a God that doesn't say, I've given up. You give us another opportunity. Father, we want to invite you into this area that we have always said we will get perfect for you. And I just hear you saying, no, I don't want you perfect. I just want you, period. I just want you. And so we are surrendering that area of our life in prayer and fasting, inviting you in. Your precious name, amen.